Oh, look, we have an honest question from an ex-mo. How long do you think it will be before you define yourself by something else? Okay, first of all, to anybody else watching, this is the same guy that a few comments ago said that he knows me, 50 to 75% knows me, because supposedly he's looked all over online to find out information about me. Not only is that impossible, but that's also creepy as fuck. But in order to get to the question, fine, here's my answer. I don't know how long I will continue making content on TikTok about ex-Mormonism. Maybe when people stop messaging me, telling me how much they enjoy the content and how helpful they find it. Maybe when the church stops indoctrinating children all over the world to believe in a ridiculous belief system that's harmful and marginalizes large groups of people, sexist and racist and all that other stuff. Or maybe when people like you stop making dumb comments like this, demonstrating that you're uncomfortable with my message. Which brings me to a couple of thoughts and then a question for you. You say you're an ex-Mormon, but I'm unconvinced. Because in the brief interaction we had, and then the continued obsession that you have with my content, you've judged my whole personality off of an iota of information. And you have the narcissistic perspective that the way that you have chosen to live your life is the way that everybody else should choose to live theirs. Red flag, these are all traits of Mormon zealots, not just your run-of-the-mill Mormon. So either you're not an ex-mo and you're lying, or you're an ex-mo and you forgot to uninstall the firmware. Finally, a question for you. How long will you let my content control your life?
It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen.
Hello, welcome to She Became Visible. I'm your host, Renee Steelman, and I'm so pleased that you're with me today. I'm going to quickly turn on my, there we go, just in case anybody comments, I want to be able to see it. So thank you for joining me this evening. I think I gave you a little preview of coming attractions. That was Shane Larson, who has a fabulous TikTok called at Shane Deconstructs. And what I love about Shane and what really drew me to his social media was his humor. And it's so relevant to the ability to deconstruct, to be able to laugh at certain situations, to laugh at ourselves for maybe saying things that we now realize that people are saying back to us. And we're like, I can't believe I ever said that. Or just laugh at doctrine that we believed. And I think if we can't do that, then we might fall into what Brittany Hartley is talking about with the nihilism. And we don't want that. We want people to enjoy life. So let me quit talking. I'm going to bring Shane on and let him tell you his story. And hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about some of his really fun TikToks. And as soon, but not before, as soon as you're done watching this, I want you to immediately get on TikTok and subscribe to Shane's channel. So let me bring him on and he can introduce himself. Hello.
Hi, Renee. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you.
So of all of the TikToks that I could have chosen, I'm hopefully that is the one you're like, oh, crud, don't show that one. Don't show that one.
No, I thought that was a great one to start with. Enya has a very, very soft spot in my heart from when I was like a teenager. There was something about that song that just kind of like plucked up my heartstrings. And so, and then, yeah, the response video to someone who, I mean, that person, if I remember right, he or she just continued to nag and nag and nag. And it was really kind of like, okay, fine, I will give you a response, because that's what they were asking for the whole time.
Yeah.
So there it was. And then I think I eventually just blocked because they just continued to, like, even though I had answered what they were asking for. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I love it. That was a great pick for the video.
I think it's so funny because you do hear yourself or reflect back on hearing yourself say what you heard our leaders, the apostles and the prophets and the people that spoke at conference, when they would say things, and then we adopt that narrative. And so we start saying to people, well, you've been taken over by Satan, or, you know, you just quit because you wanted to be able to, you know, do something fun on Sunday, and all of these things that we were, you know, drowned with. And so when people started repeating those things back to me and I heard it for the first time, it was like, oh my gosh, you've just been spoon-fed and you swallowed it and chewed it up and you love it. And it was just another example of not even being able to use critical thinking or creative thinking to even do a comeback to someone. And
Well,
yeah.
you hear all the time about, unhealthy or incorrect or just ineffective approaches for believers when believers are faced with someone who they hear about that has, started to fade away or started to disbelieve or started to show some doubt and concerns or ask questions. And you hear all the time about, like, it doesn't help to do X, Y, Z. And I remember the first time when I was on the other side of that, where I was in the room and they were actually talking about another person who they heard had stopped coming to church. They didn't know I was deconstructing. And they were talking about these other people. And someone said, why did they stop coming? What was what was the problem? And someone responded with, they just stopped doing the little things.
Oh, yeah.
Or, they got lazy. I remember
Yeah.
those two specific lines that were just immediately and knee jerk shared. They stopped doing the little things. They got lazy. So, and then they dug a little deeper and they said they stopped coming to church and they weren't reading their scriptures and they weren't praying and all that. And here I was in the room for the first time experiencing the flip side of that, where I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I get why that doesn't help.
Yeah.
I get why because right now I want to shout out loud and say, no, 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 no. It's nothing like that. It's nothing like the script, like we've been given in the script.
Right.
It's so much deeper. And I was just, like I say, I literally was screaming inside, but I didn't say anything. And so that was a perfect example of me learning how it doesn't help to just say these scripted things, because it just sent me further down the path.
Yeah.
It just made me realize, man, I was that blind.
Right.
And so I've just gone further into why it made more sense for me to continue to deconstruct.
Well, and I think too, one of the people, Coco B, just commented with the lazy learner comment, and I do think that there is a new personality with the new sheriff in town, and his personality is very black and white, very old school. I'm speaking of Russell Nelson, and I remember before I even resigned my membership, I was actually at a training conference out in New York, and I was trying to listen to as much conference as I could over the weekend. And this is when he did his myopic comment about his daughter-in-law who was grieving over the upcoming death. Her father was in hospice and he was going to be dying, and she was so upset. And she didn't even feel as though she could go to Russell's. She went to Wendy and just said, could Grandpa give me a blessing or something, because I'm feeling such grief and I feel like my testimony, my faith is wavering. And his response was, well, she's just myopic. And I remember when he was saying this over the pulpit, it was October 2022. I remember going, oh my gosh, that's terrible. You can't say that, And then he went on to use it as an example of how afterwards she thought about it a little bit. And then she realized that she was, and and I was like, wow,
not as much the tragedy as the offense itself. Is how when we're locked into these belief systems and we put these people on pedestals, we bend our world. Like that's not a fair moment for that person, right? She was a victim to this thinking system, but then she sort of like eventually molds and bends her worldview to say, okay, this is okay. That to me is as tragic, probably even more tragic than the actual offense itself.
Yeah, so much so. Well, let's start from the very beginning. I know I was looking at your TikTok, and I think one of the first posts you made was in 2017, or no, 22. It was in October of 22, but you had deconstructed 5 years before that. So that would have been in 2017.
Yeah.
But what I loved was that your whole entire purpose of reaching out on TikTok was because you were involved in mental health and you were concerned over what was going on with people that were deconstructing. And so you were a mental health facilitator for people that were going through fundamental religion loss. And so that was the whole purpose of even starting on TikTok. And you've kind of kept up TikTok as your main focus for where you're sharing and helping people to deconstruct. So take us back a little bit before 2017. Isn't that weird to look back and go, you think, oh, 2000. Yeah, I remember 2000. That was just a couple of years ago. And then you realize, oh no, that was almost 24 years ago. So what was going on in your life? Start from the very beginning. We don't have 5 hours. I'm not John DeLynn, but tell us a little bit about your story and your whole kind of process of how the deconstruction started.
Yeah, you bet. So I really appreciate the question because it allows me a chance to talk about something that really helped me. So in my first few years after deconstruction. So my deconstruction was primarily, it started from a psychological standpoint. I didn't see some red flag in like church history or church behavior of leadership, or even like inconsistent doctrine or practices. It was nothing like that. It was actually like understanding that humans have a tendency to, this is very high level, but humans have a tendency to like stay locked into their beliefs, even when their beliefs are like very irrational. And I learned the mechanisms in human psychology where that is enabled, where we can get trapped and stay locked into these bad ideas for a whole lifetime, right? And I learned this outside of the context of religion. And then once I brought it over to religion, it was like a surprise, like sprung on me moment by a friend at work. And I then, once I had this sort of epistemological structure for how I should approach my ideas, the things that I think are true in the world. Once I then had it shifted to me, or shifted over into the religion space, I couldn't find an escape because, and I say this all the time whenever I'm talking about this, if I had been trying to build an epistemological structure within the context of religion, my blockers would have been up from the outset and it probably wouldn't have been effective. But I built it in the business world first. And then when someone said, now apply this to religion, all of those blockers that allowed me to recognize the problems that we have psychologically to stay locked into our bad ideas, I had built them already. And so I couldn't escape it once I was then looking at it in terms of my beliefs and my religion. And so I understood, like, then I went into my deconstruction with a focus on psychology. And I was able to see and witness and recognize, like, wow, this could be a huge tumble. The ground is gone. And I could see how many people, maybe not most, but like how many people will have a hard time with this. And I think there needs to be support for it. So I did two things. I said, first, take care of myself. One of the huge blessings or gifts of deconstruction, I think Bill Reel likes to use that phrase. I think many content creators use that phrase. One of the greatest gifts of deconstruction for me was that I learned to, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I learned that we take care of ourselves. If we can take care of ourselves, we can then take care of others. And so I learned that my charity should be at myself first and taking care of my health first, and then it should go out, and I can better be charitable to others. So
Right.
and the phrase that I use for this all the time is self-compassion is first compassion.
That's very good.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that, I think Oprah gets a lot of credit for teaching people that if we are suffering and we can't be of service to other people, and actually the church actually teaches that. I mean, one of the main things about the word of wisdom is that if you're not healthy, if you're not strong, you can't be of service to anyone else. And so, I remember hearing that once thinking, well, that makes sense. If you have an addiction issue, you're not going to be a good partner to anyone or a good father or something like that, because you're not healthy yourself. So, but then when you take it to something like the mental issues of when you realize that maybe you were in a high demand religion that is false, then that's a whole nother thing. Well, no, don't go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're not healthy, then you can't be of service to anyone else. So that's fabulous that you recognize that.
Yeah. So I said, before I can try and offer support to others, and through all this, keep in mind, I'm not a mental health professional by any means. This is just peer support that I wanted to offer. Right. And so I said, let me take care of myself first. I did basically a year and a half where I sort of pulled in and spent a lot of time meditating, multiple times a day. Meditating, the Sam Harris app really helped me through, and listening to a lot of, he gives you a variety of meditation methods. And so I just really, really loved getting into the meditative state. And that's where I learned to look at the self and look at the ego and figure everything out there. Had a good year and a half or so where I just took care of my own mental health and found solid ground before I felt like I was okay to go and try and offer support to others. So you mentioned the timeline from 2017 to 2022 when I first did the TikTok. The first year and a half was just that, meditation, basically. After that, I then started looking for ways to offer support, and I immediately found an organization. In fact, it was an organization that I noted down early on during my deconstruction called Recovering from Religion, or it's known as RFR also. Recoveringfromreligion.org is the website if you want to check it out. Still love it. Fantastic organization. And I reached out to them and said, hey, I'd like to find a way to offer my time to help people who are in the deconstruction space. And they said, sure. We did some interviews and stuff. And finally they said, I think your fit is to be a peer support facilitator. And so I want to say it was a total of about 4 or 5 months of training and back and forth and interviewing and talking with people, learning the ropes, they do their own certification course. And I got certified through Recovering from Religion to offer peer support. And we started doing virtual. It was just like right at the time, right? It was right. I got certified right before COVID. And so I didn't ever actually do an in-person because right as soon as I got certified, COVID hit and they said, we're going virtual. So since then, until just like 2 months ago, I have offered a monthly peer support virtual session to anybody that wanted to come and join. And it's the Salt Lake City chapter of Recovering from Religion. And it's just a peer support group online.
That's amazing.
I'm no longer the host there.
Mm-hmm.
I just recently retired. I have some different plans on my efforts to try and help support the community. But that was a fantastic organization, still is a fantastic organization. They offer all sorts of great support from the peer support groups. They do virtual, they do in person, they do a Monday. It's a weekly Monday. It's called RFRX. It's like a person comes that has like knowledge and expertise in a certain specific area. And then they do sort of like a social online thing. And then there's all sorts of resources, including one great organization or one great arm of their organization called seculartherapy.org, where you can search for therapists local to you that are publicly secular, which is a strange thing in America. It's hard to like come out public and say, I'm a secular therapist. You're going to get like some pushback on that. It's kind of a weird, it's not right, but this is an arm of that organization that helps people connect with local secular therapists because that could be good or the right fit for people.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I can't imagine someone going into any other professional in the medical field and saying, you go to your primary care physician and for example, my mom and dad were serving a mission in New York, and the New York temple closed down. You know how they closed down for a couple of weeks and they clean and all of that. So they came back to Oregon because they had Kaiser. And so they didn't actually have any medical services while they were in New York. So they come back to Oregon. They go, we've got 2 weeks. We'll go get our physicals. We'll do dental work. We'll do all of this stuff. So my dad goes in for his physical and they rush him to the hospital and he has triple bypass surgery. So I can't imagine him saying, wait, is my cardiologist LDS? I need to, if he's not LDS, is my dentist LDS? Well, he probably is because they're all LDS, but you know what I mean? Or is my CPA LDS?
Yeah.
But when you're looking for a therapist, they want to know if they're LDS. You say, well, they're a secular therapist. You're like, well, I don't know about that. Then they're not going to understand, that I need to read my scriptures 3 times a day and this kind of stuff. And it's like, there is no other field in the medical field that you require them to be your same religion until it comes to your mental health. So that's amazing.
It's a form of anti-science, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but what wonderful services. I will try, if I can remember how to do this, to put those links in this so that people can find that, because that is amazing. Yeah. And I love, it's funny because I'm curious. I'd be curious to see if anybody else in the comment section, if that's part of the process, is finding people like Sam Harris and New Age, not New Age, no, that wasn't him. Who's the secular Buddhist? He has a a podcast, the Secular Buddhism.
It's TXLDS too.
Yeah, yeah. But what I loved about him was he gave me permission to not meditate. So because I bought the pillow, I have the lotus pillow. I set it outside in the backyard. I took Sam Harris and his app out into the hot tub and I put it on. And then I listened to the Secular Buddhism and they said, you can go for a walk. I'm like, thank you. Thank you for letting me move. I cannot sit still. It is impossible for me to sit still.
Is it Noah Rasheta? Is that his
name? That's who it is. That's who it is. But that was beautiful. But I really loved Sam. Sam was one of the first people that I turned to when I was going through my deconstruction. And of course, Christopher Hitchens and that whole bit. You have to go through that whole, that's part of it. Somebody should make like a pyramid, right? For deconstruction of all the people we listen to. Mormon stories, Sam Harris,
I'm noting that down. What is that? That's like that's a great TikTok for sure.
The pyramid. Yeah.
There's
standard American diet, standard deconstruction.
Exactly. Pathway through ex-Mormonism, by the voices.
Yeah. Don't go gluten-free. Just go. No, that would be excellent. Well, your humor is fabulous, so you'll come up with something.
Yeah, I'll throw in a stab to MLMs or something in there too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. One of my favorite podcasts is Lindsay Hansen Park and Brian and their Sunstone History channel. And the latest one that they just did where they're talking about violence in the church. And just a little tidbit they referenced Tim Ballard. But it's just amazing, when you start doing the historical similarities and how things haven't changed and the money and all of this kind of stuff. But what you're saying is that history was not a part of your deconstruction.
I mean, it was eventually.
Okay.
It wasn't the catalyst. It wasn't what started.
Interesting.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't that I found some scary doctrine that I hadn't heard of in the past. Those things did happen. They came later.
Yeah.
But I literally had the best way I can describe it visually is that there was like a kaleidoscope in my brain for about 3 seconds. After I had presented this, I did a presentation. So the book that started it all wasn't even a religious book or anything. It was called A More Beautiful Question by Warren Berger. And basically the book, it says you need to question the things that you think you know about the world in order to have good ideas at work or come up with new innovations or inventions. Are you an inventor? You need to be questioning. Are you trying to innovate in your company? You need to be questioning. Are you an HR professional? You need to be questioning the ways that your company is doing. No matter where you were, it was more of a business-oriented book. And so I presented to my company, because I did work in training in HR at the time. And so I presented to my company this methodology of questioning. And I said, go and do this with your teams and in your meetings. Have a meeting next week where you don't answer anything. You just ask questions. Like I question. And I showed why it's effective and all this stuff. And literally after the presentation, a friend of mine at my workplace walked up. By the way, the closer of the book and my presentation is to apply this to all things. It doesn't just apply at workplace. Right. Apply it everywhere. So I closed my presentation with that. And afterwards, this friend of mine came up to me and he said, loved it. That was great. He was being really nice. And then he said, and you're right. What you said at the end, we should apply this to everything. And I said, yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. And he leaned in and said, except for the church, right? Right into my ear. Was
he being cynical or was he
into my, he wasn't nibbling on my ear.
Yeah.
But he was he got right in and he just really wanted to make a point about something. It was even if he'd have been except for the church, right? Or something jokey, whatever.
Yeah.
It might not have happened the same way, but he leaned in and he made sure that message sunk deeper. And that was the kaleidoscope in the head moment.
Wow.
Because my mind panicked, I feel like. And I think I got a shot of adrenaline or something because for the first time, I had this awakening moment where I said to myself, why have I never, ever truly questioned the thing I say is most important? And I think all the alarms went off in an instant.
Oh my gosh.
So I had this moment where I was and then I couldn't escape it. None of the answers for why I hadn't questioned it made any sense because I was inside the walls of this questioning methodology.
Right.
Anytime I tried to think of a way out, or my brain tried to create a way out, I was already like, oh, but everybody around me believes me or believes it, just like us and my family, and we all believe it and we're all happy. Oh, that's all confirmation bias, and that doesn't actually mean it's true. I was just using the things I had taught in the presentation I just gave to like demonstrate to myself why my thinking was flawed. So yeah,
That's amazing.
Then later on, of course, then I said, all right, I have to look into it. I have to question. So then I started listening to Bill Reel and listening to Mormon Stories podcast and reading books like crazy and saying, no, I'm not going to like, there are no forbidden things to read. CES letter. You're telling me not to read it. That means I'm going to read it. You know, like,
Yeah.
it was done. And it was a fast track from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because, you know, last week I had Dr. Matt Harris on my show, and he said that's the tool that he uses in his classroom is when one of his students will say something, he'll say, well, why do you think they did that? Why did they do that? You know, and it's just a continual questioning of, well, then why do you think they said that? Well, then they did that. Why do you think they did that? And the more you ask yourself that, it's amazing. And isn't it funny that children learn that way? Children start out by going, why can't I do this? And why isn't that? And why is this? And that's where we started going, I don't know. Just be quiet and eat your lunch, you know. But that's how people learn.
I understand why the prophets say, don't ask me why anymore.
Yeah.
After being a father.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like, after a few whys, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm done. Let's just go shoot hoops, buddy.
Yeah.
So like, no, but actually I love that you said that, because one of the tools in this, you know, set of tools that I presented and that this book presents is why, I don't remember if they called it this, but I called it this in the presentation. I called it Y5X. If you're kind of trying to figure out a pathway for something and you don't really know or don't feel like you have direction, ask yourself why at least 5 times. Y5X. Let's go Y5X on this topic. So here's what we want to do. Why do we want to do it? And then someone says, okay, well, why do we want to do that? And then someone says an answer to that. Go at least 5 whys deep to try and get to the core reason why you're trying to do something. And yeah, when you do that with, don't read this thing.
Yeah.
Well, why shouldn't I read this thing?
Right.
Because this. Well, why should I care about, why should I worry about that? Well, because you don't, and you get to the why. And eventually it's like, there's no good why, you know.
Yeah.
I actually, this is pointing to, I should be doing this, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, you know, because I remember my mom, I had just learned about the gospel topics essays about 3 years ago. And we had invited my mom to our home for Christmas. And she unwillingly came, but you know, she felt obligated. And so I said something to her, and she was a little concerned because, Shane, you'll love this. So when my husband and I moved down to Arizona, we bought our Harleys down here because you can actually ride your bike, you know, pretty much all year round in Arizona. And we came from Oregon where you can't. So I really got into skulls, you know. I love the whole skull thing. And plus it was really popular about 4 or 5 years ago. Skulls were everywhere. They were on clothing and everything, you know. And so I don't put my skulls away at Halloween. And in fact, my grandkids were just here for Thanksgiving, and they're like, no, has her Halloween decorations up still? It's like, no, honey, that's wallpaper. That stays up all the time, you know.
Year round.
Yeah. But my mom came in and she's like, what's with all the skulls? And I was like, I don't know, Mom. It's just kind of a thing. I just really love them. Well, I don't see any pictures of Jesus. And, you know, and I'm like, well, actually, that's a picture of Jesus over there. It's not your typical, you know, Deseret book surfer Jesus, but that's, you know, Walter Rain's picture of Jesus. And yes, he was Hebrew. And Mom didn't even recognize him. But anyway, so I brought up.
You should have told her one of the skulls is actually Jesus' skull. That skull right there. That's Jesus' skull.
Yeah, look. Yeah.
You don't recognize him?
Yeah.
You don't recognize Jesus, Mom?
That's right.
That's the skull right there.
You don't know him? Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to get a picture of Mary with the skull, the Catholic thing, because that's, you know, the skull is in other cultures, the skull is a love of your ancestors. It's reminiscent for that, you know.
It's a human symbol, right? It's just human.
Yeah. It's a cycle of life. And so anyway, I brought up the gospel topics essay. She goes, what anti-Mormon stuff are you reading? And I said, Mom, it's on LDS.org. And so I think if somebody would have said, like, for example, when our kids were little, there were quite a few people in the high school system that belonged to the Baptist church. And so they were doing the God story and that whole thing. And the coaches of my son's football, he was so frustrated because all the dang really good football players were these Mormon kids. And it was frustrating the heck out of him. It's like, come to my church, we'll show you the God makers and fix you guys, fix you people all up. So I would have never watched the God makers. I would have never gone to a Christian bookstore and said, do you have anything that's anti-Mormon? Right.
Right.
So what I read was, like Greg Prince's book on the priesthood, Greg Prince's book on Prop 8, this very faithful Mormon man. And I thought, this is safe. This is really safe, because this is
Stone rolling is a big starting point for a lot of people.
Yes, rough stone rolling was my next one. And then, and so it's like, I'm reading all the authorized church books and I'm like, oh my gosh, So
Yeah.
I think, like you were saying, when you just start asking yourself why, and then you go into church history where you're not reading anti-Mormon crazy stuff, that's where you start going, now, why did they do that? Or why did I believe that? Or why do you think Joseph Smith really did that? Or why were they really not liked in Missouri? Why, is it really that they were, against slavery or pro-slavery? Really? Was that really why? I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Just start asking yourself, why do you suppose the entire state was against them? That doesn't seem right,
And so often it's just the same principles that I learned as a Mormon ended up being, once I just had that small switch, ended up being the same things that drove me away, right? Like seeking truth. Truth was important to me, and truth continues to be important to me.
Absolutely.
I have new commitments. Like my truth used to be, the important part of truth used to be hold to the truth that I know.
Mhm.
Before I knew better. And now I know better, which truth, the seeking of truth now means don't hold on to anything and don't ever be certain about anything. And that's the more likely path to truth.
Yeah.
And be willing to let go and accept pain, accept that pain will come and discomfort will come. If you're truly committed to truth, that's what it takes. Not comfort and certainty. Like it's just a flip of all the things. But seeking truth is still the core principle. It's just that it's been flipped on its head because of this, because I was duped, right?
Yeah.
I was truly duped.
Have you seen that bleed into other areas of your life because you've now learned how to ask why and to question? Have you found yourself questioning, like, I've always been a little skeptical of the medical field. And, my children were all born in a naturopath clinic, and I've always been very skeptical of anything like that. But even now I feel like I am so skeptical of everything. I mean, I can barely watch television at all anymore without going, I don't believe that. I gotta watch 5 other news channels before I believe that, or I have to read something, or I have to listen to so-and-so, but I'm okay with that. I really am okay with that because I've seen the danger of just saying, well, I don't know. My doctor said, here's a good example. My husband, we retires and we have to go on Cobra insurance. So we have to find all new doctors. So we're living in Oregon. We decided, well, let's try Cobra for 18 months until we get on Medicare or whatever. And so he goes to the doctor and the doctor says, well, you're 65. So you need to start taking a daily baby aspirin. And my husband's like, okay. And he comes home and he says, well, the doctor says I need to take a baby aspirin every day. I said, why? He goes, well, because I'm 65. And I said, but what does that have to do with it? You don't have heart conditions. You never had a heart problem. In fact, you have a little problem with gastric reflux. So I don't think you should be taking a baby aspirin every day. Yeah. Thank heavens he didn't do that. Because then 3 years later, they're like, don't take baby aspirin every day, Yep. But if you're the type of person that doesn't question authority, or you have a deep respect for authorities or people that have a lot of initials behind their name, and you don't say, why do you think I should take a baby aspirin every day? Yep. If you don't ask those questions in every area of your life. Yeah. I mean, look at the people, my husband, how many stories? You probably have the story. You take your mom into the doctor. She takes, her whole bag of medication, sets it on the table. And the doctor goes, who told you to take this? And you're like, you did. And they're like, well, stop taking that today, And so you've got to be your own self advocate. And that's for every single area of your life. So I love that that was the beginning, was like, this man saying, but don't question the church. You know, you're like, oh, wow. Talk about, that's amazing.
That is one of the most like pivotal single moments in my life for sure. Because it set me on the path
Yeah.
towards all of that. And to answer your question, yeah, it's tricky because like society does rely upon some sort of like general trust in some systems, right? If we were all just out there like, no, right, it does get crazy. And so it is a fine balance. So I guess generally I look towards data, if we can find a trusted source for data, and if data presents presents enough in a direction, then that's probably the direction I'm going to go. Of course, I'm going to question the sources. Of course, I'm going to question the methodology of collecting data and all of that. But you don't have time in the world to do that for every single thing, and so it gets tricky for sure on the things you want to spend. It's clear though that I have chosen that presenting information in a fun way for me on TikTok so that people will maybe have those moments like I have where someone says, except for the church, right?
Yeah.
I want to create except for the church moments for people.
Yeah. Well,
or if they're on that path, I want them to feel normal about it. And if they're if they're choosing between crying and laughing about what they're going through, I want to show them it's okay to laugh, right? And that's, for me, like I grew up, it's going to get a little bit thick for a second, but my dad passed away when I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. I was on top of the world. Like I literally was having a Zac Efron high school moment, right? Where everything was great. I was like captain of the football and basketball team, and like I was popular, and I had so much going for me, and I just seemed to be on top of like a high school experience world. And I came home one night and my dad was dead. And I remember there was a moment, like one of the darkest moments of my life. My family, we all come together. We're all in our home. My extended family, they all come over. Their support, they come over. We're all, going through that dark, abysmally dark night. And then some of the extended family leaves or whatever. And it's around 5 o'clock in the morning. And my immediate family is really all that's there. It's just like me, my siblings, my mom. And we're talking about memories of dad. And this is, still, the flesh wound is wide open. And we end up all together, like laughing about some of the things that he had done, and silly things, dumb things he'd said, jokes he would crack, his dry humor. And we were laughing. So we had gone through all of this pain and turmoil. We'd all been bawling. And then we were laughing together, right? I remember the laughing to this day with my family that night more than I remember the crying. And so it's built in me to like find a way, find the laughable, find the absurdity in life, and laugh at that absurdity, and that is my way of like processing the painful things that life can present. I used to feel, when I was a believer, this is the last point I want to make on this. But when I was a believer, I actually used to feel some guilt at laughing at those hard moments. I don't remember if it was taught to me or if I just like that came myself, but I remember thinking I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't joke about that. It's too sacred. It's too, like that's not something we should be joking about. And since another gift of deconstruction is that I have learned that the absurdity, the absurdism, right? I can joke about anything. I really, really can, as long as it doesn't attack or hurt other people.
Right.
But like, if it's me and my story, and if it's the way I choose to process what I've been through, if it helps me and I'm not hurting anybody else, I am going to crack the joke. And I am going to, and I feel better when I do it. I'm always cautious and I always worry. And this is one thing that I'm every time I like send a video out there, and I know I'm joking about this stuff, I watch the video and I'm trying to ensure am I like making fun of a person here, or am I just giving out beliefs? I really, really want to make sure that is something that I continue to do. my terms and my wording and everything. I'm joking about the beliefs that I used to hold and that others do hold, but I do think it's okay to criticize, mock,
Right.
front of, and tease beliefs, because beliefs are not people. People are not beliefs.
Right.
You can be a great person and have really bad beliefs.
Right.
And so I try to always separate those two.
Isn't that funny that people can separate and again, I think it's because it's been spoon fed to them. They can separate hate the sin, but love the sinner. Or, we love the LGBTQ, but we want you to live in misery and alone for the rest of your life. But we love you. And we understand that you have a severe disability. We all have disabilities, and this is your disability. And, the whole rhetoric that they throw out. But when you say something about, like, well, I'm making fun of the system. I'm not making fun of the people. The people are beautiful people. They're beautiful people.
Yeah.
And like you say, opportunities to serve and being put together with a, I think the ministering sister thing had only been around a couple of years before I left. But when I was put with a visiting teaching companion that I had absolutely nothing in common with, but it forced me to get to know somebody that I wouldn't have gotten to know in the ward. And we went and visited someone that I would have never gotten to know in the ward. What a beautiful program that is. And so to be able to do that and then say, but this is the way the system works. These are some things that are truly scary and maybe a little illegal, actually, and very hurtful and damaging. And so when you're talking about that on your TikTok, you're talking about a system of beliefs that can really be hurtful to people. You're not talking about people. And so it is funny when that example but then the comeback is a personal hyperbolic comeback about you personally. And like you were saying about how this is your whole personality, you're so angry and that whole thing. So it's so true. If we can't look at the system and go, oh my gosh, that was, just even compare it to something as simple as Norman Lear just died, right? So everybody's talking about All in the Family and the Jeffersons and all the shows that he had a part of, and how those shows probably couldn't be made today because everybody's so sensitive and very conscious of things like that. But they laugh. They talk about, oh my gosh, can you believe the things we used to say? And it needs to, sometimes I think the church needs to be looked at that same way. Can you believe we used to teach that? Can you believe we used to tell families? Can you believe that we're still telling families that you will have an empty chair at the table? I don't know whose table we're sitting at. I think it's Greg Prince that says, whose Thanksgiving table are we sitting at where there's an empty chair, in the Celestial Kingdom? But, or President Nelson's newest thing about our Ken bodies, or Barbie and Ken, if you're not in the Celestial Kingdom, you'll have no genitals. Yeah, the TK smoothie, and it's like, it's 2023. Are we really bringing that back up again? If you can't laugh about that and go, no.
The fascinating thing about the way that Russ Nelson brought that up is he can't say it outright.
Yeah.
Like back in whenever it was in the 50s or 60s when it was like taught outright in which prophet's book was it in? Anyway, it was way more direct.
Yeah.
Like I think the wording was something like will neither be male or female in gender or whatever it was, right? It was pretty specific. Like they were talking about the genitalia, right?
Yeah.
Today, so Russ Nelson comes from that, right? He was raised in that. That's probably his core belief.
Yeah.
But he, even as the prophet, knows he can't say it directly. So he has to speak in a code where only those who know what he's talking about will be like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
But then those who didn't ever hear that will be like, okay, we'll have bodies that are whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
But that's a version. I know it's just him trying to do his best with this world that he lives in as a prophet. But like, it's also, when you look at it from the critic side of it, would say this is kind of a form of gaslighting, because what you're doing is you're saying words that are carefully placed so that those people, the older generation who like were taught that, they can hold on to that belief and continue smooth sailing with it. You don't have to disrupt anything there with their beliefs, or rattle that. And then those who don't know what you're talking about, but doesn't allude to it strongly enough, that they can just kind of say like, oh, that's kind of interesting, our bodies, but they're not going to know
Yeah.
specifically what's being talked about.
Yeah.
It's
You know,
fascinating.
it's funny. I found well, it's a new YouTube, but it's an old movie that was made when Spencer W. Kimball was the prophet. And it was with Ed Decker, who's the God Maker guy, and another evangelical. And they were having a fake debate. And they were pretending that the one, Ed Decker, was the Mormon missionary that knocked on this guy's door, and this guy was the evangelical guy. And they were having this debate back and forth. And the best thing about it was, because this was back in Spencer Kimball's day, they were bringing up, I'm going to be a god, I'm going to have my own planet. I mean, they were going through everything that's being denied. We never said that. We never told you were going to live. We never told you that you wouldn't have a full genitalia if you weren't in the celestial kingdom. We never taught you that. And here's this YouTube where he's saying, but don't you understand that we will all be gods? And the evangelical is saying, no, it says in Romans that there is only one God. Well, no. And then they're going on and they're saying, so it's like, you just give it up. Please try to stop denying it,
Super hard shift what the church is trying to do right now. Because from my view, what I see the church trying to do is it's trying really hard to blend into mainstream Christianity.
Yes.
And I'm seeing a lot more of so I was chatting with a relative of mine about a year ago, who's a very firm TBM, hard believer. And he was referencing the Bible before the Book of Mormon. He was defending the Bible before the Book of Mormon, which I was fascinated by, because I grew up in a version of Mormonism that said, look to the Book of Mormon first because it clarifies the Bible.
Yes.
The Bible's problematic. That's why we have the Book of Mormon, to clarify the issues over there. There's all that confusion with all of Christianity. Like, we got it clear because God gave us a second set of scriptures that will clarify all the confusion that's over in the Bible. But I'm seeing like current TBMs that are looking to the Bible and going and defending the Bible, like almost as first position these days. Have you experienced that as well?
Yeah. And it's funny because I went to the Faith Matters conference that they had up in Salt Lake back in October with my husband. And I was just like, where am I? This is not, you guys are Mormons? Are you sure? Are you sure you're Mormon? I mean, the music, the verbiage, the narrative. I thought I was back in Texas at Joel Osteen's church. It was like, what is happening? And I was listening to a couple little boys that have a podcast, and I wanted to count how many times they said awesome. I think the church should copyright awesome. It's like, that is an LDS term. You cannot use that unless you're a Mormon. It's like, it was so awesome. And anyway, and they were just rattling off this, there's 600, in the Book of Mormon, Jesus is mentioned over 600 times. And, Jesus is just another testament of Jesus, or the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. And I'm like, in my days in the church, I don't think we even talked about Jesus Christ. I couldn't even have told you, now that I've been, under Bart Ehrman's tutelage and everything else, I'm like, oh, so that's who Paul was. Oh, okay. So what's this Corinthians thing? I mean, everything was out of the Book of Mormon, everything. Then it was Nephi, it was, Ammoni, it was all of that. It was never biblical that we studied.
Bart Ehrman is a Bible scholar, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a New Testament scholar. Yeah.
So you got your Bart Ehrmans, you got your Richard Rohrs, and then like Dan McClellan. Have you seen? Dan McClellan's just blowing up, right? Like, and the fascinating thing there is that I don't even know where he is with belief, and it's no big deal, because what he's doing is so important, because he is just taking the Bible and he's breaking it down, and he understands the languages and the sort, and he's just like, no nonsense. Like, hey guys, here's this, like, it's not that, it's this. Sorry.
No,
and
it's so great.
I love how straightforward he is.
Yeah.
And I have shared his stuff with other people where I know that my believing audience will see it, and I just freaking love it. So one of the things, like in the same conversation, that I noticed that was really fascinating. So as I'm noticing that this person I'm engaged with is talking more about the Bible and defending the Bible, he's making very juvenile claims about the Bible, like the kinds of claims that maybe Christianity was making 10, 15, 20 plus years ago, where they're saying that everything in the Bible is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Right. The Bible has no evidence against it, or like the Bible is the ultimate source of, and I'm seeing these kinds of defenses for the Bible from some of these like Mormons who are shifting over towards the Bible as we try
Yeah.
to like, as we try to blend in with mainstream Christianity.
Right.
And I'm like, what is this going to create when they start running up against, when they start finding the Richard Rohrs, the Bart Ehrmans, the Dan McClellans, that, you know, and they
Yeah.
realize, oh, wait, none of it is stable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's beautiful. So when you, where are you? Because you mentioned you had siblings. How many siblings do you have, and where do you fall as far as membership in the church? Are you the black sheep of the family?
There's 7 children. Yep, I've got a classic small town Mormon family.
Yeah. Where are you?
I am 6th of 7,
Oh my gosh.
the penultimate, and I was the youngest child for 5 years. We had sort of a latecomer,
Oh,
so I kind of got the best of both worlds. I tell this all the time.
yeah.
I got to be the last for 5 years. That was long enough to sort of establish all the norms of the last child.
Yeah.
So I still got spoiled and everything like I did the last child. Even when the last child came along, I still kind of continue to get treated like a last child.
Yeah.
So no, actually the last child, he sort of faded away from attendance and activity in high school.
Oh.
And this is actually a really fascinating story that goes to show like how strong the psychology is to like indoctrination, right? Because
Right.
he faded away and we all knew it. And the other siblings, we all stayed solid. And we never really ever talked about it. I never asked him about it. There were some moments where I look back and once I had deconstructed myself, I sat down with him and I apologized, just like I was crying because I was so sorry for the ways that I judged him.
Mm.
And there were some specific moments in his younger years where I felt a lot of like guilt for the way that I was because of the worldview that I had at the time. And another gift of deconstruction was to be able to sit down with my sibling that I had judged so hard and so just wrongfully, my actions weren't fair to him because I was in this believing space and I thought I knew with certainty the way things would go.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing these things that disagreed with that.
Yeah.
And so I told him, sorry. And this was a really big eye-opening moment to me. I said, I think I was really hard and really judgmental on you, and I'm really sorry. And you know how you expect when you say something like that, you expect in your head, you have these predictions on what might be the response.
Right.
With a sorry, you have this thought in your mind that is like, maybe they'll say it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. I understand why or whatever. And he just looked at me and he said, yeah, you were.
Mm.
And it was fair. Like he deserved to say that. He deserved to let me know. And it just made it cut even deeper. Right. Like, and I was that much more sorry, but that's another gift of deconstruction, to be able to have that all removed from our relationship, you know, and be able to put in our past and move forward in a new space. So
Yeah. You know, the saddest thing is we have 6 children, and I don't regret anything as a mother that I did as far as bringing them up, parenting them in general. My regrets are all around what I did to them because of the church. And for example, our second son, I think I mentioned this once before, he was going to Oregon State, loving it, had plans on getting his bachelor in international studies. But we were concerned because he wasn't going to church. Good kid, following all the rules, good kid, but he wasn't going to church. And so we gave him an ultimatum. You either go back to church, or we're not going to pay for your schooling anymore. Or you can go to BYU. If you want to go to BYU, then we'll continue to pay for your schooling. And so he went to BYU so that we would continue to pay for it. And he had to switch his major over to psychology because his credits didn't transfer. I didn't understand the quarter program versus the semester program. I didn't understand how many credits he lost by transferring school. And to this day, I cannot believe I did that to him. And I did it just because I thought that if he went to BYU, he would get active in the church and go on a mission. Yeah. And, you know, and I am so, if I could go back and do anything, you know. And then I have my other son that when he got married and they started having babies, they decided, well, maybe we should find a church. And so they decided, well, let's try the Mormon church out. And so she got baptized. And I was like, you got to go to the temple. You got to go to the temple. We got to get you to the temple. And so they had, her baby came early, and I am rushing them to the temple. The baby's like a week old. And I'm like, you got to go to the temple. You got to go to the temple. And this poor girl that just joined the church is like, what the heck is, and it was all because of this indoctrination that I had been, you got to get these babies, sealed to you. And it's just insanity. And thank heavens. I mean, but like you, Sean, my one son said, when you left the church, I was a little resentful because of you dragged us to church every Sunday, and you made us do this and you made us do that. And now you're like, oh, never mind, and I was like, yeah, I get it. I understand. That's hard.
It's next step thinking, next step doctrine. Like the Mormon church has done a remarkable job on creating the pathway for like your righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
Every step of the way, there is a next step, right? So to continue to feel that progress, there is a next step in place. When I believed, that was a beautiful thing. And I thrived on having a clear path and an easy path. It was easy. It was never hard for me to obey the word of wisdom, to obey the law of chastity, to do. Those were all things where I was like, because I know that this whole thing is true, and I know what comes as a reward in the next life.
Right.
This is easy. I was very obedient. I was good for the most part. I made mistakes like everyone, of course, but like very good. I was a very good Mormon. I followed those paths and I loved it. And it was easy. But walking away from Mormonism was a much harder decision than what the next decision would have been in my path of belief if I had remained locked in to Mormonism. So people who throw out you're just taking the easy path, I understand why they say it,
right?
But they haven't empathetically thought of that very hard,
right?
Because especially when you're talking to someone who loves and is good in the church and wants to be, because the next step is laid out for you. So when you want the next step for your loved ones, that's understandable. And when you put incentives in front of them in order to take that right next step, it's because the certainty in your mind is there, and this is the right thing to do. So it's all justified. So it's easy for me to like look back and forgive myself for the things that I did that I see as wrong now.
Right.
It's just when I get to those moments and like with my brother, where I'm trying to heal it, and I feel I feel the pain that it caused them, those are the hardest moments for me.
Yeah. So on your TikTok, like I said, you have a way of throwing things out with just the little bit of cynicism that just, you can't help but laugh at it. What's been like, which one of your posts have you gotten the most either kickback from, or the most like, good job, Shane,
Oh, that's a great question.
Maybe. Did you have you gotten any feedback off the one where you said run away, but if you still want to stay, then what about this, and if not, run away? Because that was one of my favorite ones.
The runaway post was for sure. I got a lot of people who pushed back on that, but I also got, for the first time, I think the message that was shared there was, it reached outside of just the Mormon world, right? Where I think I got a lot of ex-evangelicals, I got a lot of ex-J-dubs, I got a lot of just Christians in general, people who had deconstructed their high demand religions of all sorts, who reached out to me and said, this is the same pattern. Like, thanks for posting this, because this relates to our story over here as well. Right. And so I think the network started to grow to be outside of ex-Mormonism there. More recently, the video where, and this one just like came together late at night one night. And I had done actually 2 different like takes on it, and they just didn't feel right. I was almost going to post, and then I was like, no, I got to scrap. There's something more that it needed. And it was when I go grab my scriptures, and I like thumb to the back of my scriptures, and I left myself a personal note. and the personal notes says,
Yes.
yeah. So that one right there, it came together in like, I had 3 different ideas that sort of finally led up to that final idea. And the way it came together and the way that the music like played into that one, it was one of those where I was just like, man, if I was a believer, I would have thought this was inspired by God. It was no God, right? Like it was a no God experience, because everything just kind of fell in, right? And when I finally like published that thing, and the feedback that I got from it, I felt like that one was just, I had a lot of fun with that one. And I've had once again, outside of Mormonism, people are saying like, I might do this to my scriptures. This is so real, because it saying, like, looking back at those scriptures doesn't have to induce a trauma response.
Right.
If we can look back and see all the notes that we used to take, and all of the certainty comment, like, because when I look through my old scriptures, I'm seeing things that I wrote, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, holy cow, how deep in was I? And
Yeah.
it can make you go into a place where it's like, this is dark, this is hard. Like the world is against us all. Like this is really, and you can start to, I think Britt Hartley, she talks about this whole like cycle that you can get into. Like,
Right.
this really sucks, but if we can shift the thinking then and be able to laugh at it. And so that note in the back of the scriptures that says, you used to believe all this shit, so like, let's laugh about that. And I've progressed. I'm doing better now because I don't believe all of that. And so that's a good thing, right? And so it makes me feel better.
And I love some of the comments here are some of the favorites that people are commenting are the ones where you're saying things to say to a Mormon to freak them out. It's like when they say, hey, hi, how you doing? You should say, what is wanted? That thing. Or that's what I say to my husband all the time. He'll say something and I'll say, I shall go down, and then he just kind of shakes his head. Like,
yeah, the How to Troll a Mormon, that's been a fun one.
Yeah, those are fun. And I also love the one where you said, what is something that you have memorized that is absolutely useless, and you did the whole veil ceremony. And it was so funny because right away I was like, Eve, having been good and faithful, wishes to speak to the Lord for on behalf of. Yeah.
Everyone knows the next lines.
Yeah. And then you said, well, I might be able to get in. And so I said to my husband, I said, I think I might be able to sneak in,
Exactly. Yep.
It's like, I don't think so. But
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to tell you what my favorite scripture is. And I used to do this when the sister missionaries would come over and they'd say, well, what's your favorite scripture? And I said, this is my favorite scripture. It's Alma chapter 50, and it's verses 29, 30, and 31st. And she says, therefore, Morianton put it into their hearts that they should flee to the land which was northward, which was covered with large bodies of water, and take possession of the land. And behold, they would have carried this plan into effect, which would have been a cause to have been lamented. But behold, Morianton, being a man of much passion, therefore he was angry with one of his maidservants, and he fell upon her and beat her much. And it came to pass that she fled and came over to the camp of Moroni and told Moroni all the things concerning the matter, and also concerning their intentions to flee into the land northward. And I was like, I love that scripture. See, it was a woman. It was a woman that just threw the whole thing out. And if it wouldn't have been for her, Moroni wouldn't have had a chance,
Yep, exactly.
These poor little 19-year-old missionaries are like, where did you find that? I'm like, it's in the book. It's in Alma. It's my favorite scripture.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. But no, you're what are some of the other favorites that you've done on your TikTok?
I do tend to like do series more than I'll hop on a series for a minute and I'll have the ideas that just are kind of flowing from that series. And so I really enjoyed the Say Here series while I was really deep into the Say Here stuff. So basically it's the series where a Mormon says something and an ex-Mormon hears this, or an ex-Mormon says this and the Mormon hears this. What that did was, it was a really healthy moment for me through all of my content to like reflect on, it was an empathetic thing for me. And there were times when, I was trying to take funny moments in, like, we say that, so someone says, who's ex-Mormon, they say something like, I love coffee. And a believing Mormon who has known you their whole life, like my sibling hears me say that, and they hear Satan got me to try coffee, and now I drink it all the time, and I can't get back, and now I don't feel worthy to come to church, and so that's why I don't believe, but I still really believe it, but I can't come because of the guilt.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the exact words, but that's actually one of them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's these things where we do it in both directions, right? When a believing Mormon says something like, that's when faith becomes important. An ex-Mormon hears, that's when evidence stops being important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was just like all of these things that like where we miss each other in these conversations because we're not really trying to build bridges, because the human brain just wants to like protect itself and stay in its comfortable place. We don't hear what people say.
No.
And so that series was it's just a really fun one to do. I haven't done one on that one for a while.
Yeah.
That series was very fun, but it was also, I would sometimes do this and see the humor in it. I would post it and then I'd watch it and I would cry afterwards. Because it's really kind of like, it's really sad too.
Yeah.
That we do this, that we don't hear people when they try and say their stories. And instead our brain is like filtering it to protect us rather than to hear them. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like I say, it's not like what was good about that one was almost bridge building, because it goes both ways. Ex-Mormons do it to the Mormons that try to say their things too.
Yeah. That's true. And I do love, that you have to be very careful. Tell me if you found this when you were doing your peer support, that to find a new community doesn't turn into just trauma bonding. That that your new community is not just a circle of people sitting in a therapy session just come on a loop of just anger and frustration and just sadness.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
In the support sessions that we would do, sometimes the conversation would just flow, and those were like the magical moments because everyone was sharing their experience. And probably the best thing that came out overall, if I were to say during my 3 years that I offered that monthly support session, I think the overarching theme was we all have our own unique experiences, but when we pull away to the high level, there's also the Venn diagram is very, very big. And so it's really fun to share those unique things. But when it comes to religion and deconstructing, especially from high demand religion, it's the same things. And this comes back to human psychology, right? It's the same things with just different labels.
Yeah.
Right. Like we have the word of wisdom and we have our chastity rules and all of that. And then if you talk to someone who came from Jehovah's Witnesses, they are going to say, we had this and this, and they are very close to the same. And so you become you do trauma bond, right? Because you can relate so well together, but then you still have your like little details that are fascinating for everybody to listen to. Like, oh, so it was different. Tell me about those differences. Relatable. And then you go and you can just really, it's just fascinating to hear people out with the small differences that are found in the weeds and hearing their beautiful stories.
Yeah.
And feel valid too. At the same time, everyone gets validated.
That's so true. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I don't even remember who it was, but it was an evangelical that lost his belief in Christ. And it was interesting to hear him say exactly what LDS people say. Was like, people would say to me, well, you never really had a testimony. You really never did study your scriptures. And he was a pastor and he had gone to school, and he had done all the training. He said, and so it's like, isn't that funny? Or I remember even my husband, when I first, started deconstructing and finally said, I'm done with all this. And he said, have you been reading your scriptures? And I said, what scriptures would you suggest I read? I mean, I don't understand what that, that's just such a blanket statement. It's like, I don't believe the Book of Mormon is a true history of people that came to the United States from Jerusalem. So why would I read that? And I said, but I have listened to many hours of Bart Ehrman, you know. So if you want to count that, I guess I'm getting pretty knowledgeable about the New Testament that I never even understood. So I guess I'm kind of reading my scriptures, but I even got a new version of the Bible, you know. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
so yeah, I am, but I don't know if that's the scriptures you want me to be reading. But yeah, so when you can, and that would be the important thing, is just to listen to other people from other high demand religions going through the exact same thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. That
I
was
mean,
one of the beautiful things about that role, the volunteering that I did over there with RFR, for sure.
yeah, the purity culture is rampant throughout, you know, all of the high demand religions, and there's you know, patriarchy is strong with you know, in a lot of the Abrahamic religion, so that we have a lot of things in common. We
For
just
sure.
have our own special quirkiness.
We just have our
So
ways that we can say that ours is more true than theirs, or ours is truth and theirs is just like partial truths.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Well, this has just been absolutely fabulous. I've just enjoyed, you know, and I'm going to tell everybody, I'm going to get all the references that you gave me, and so that afterwards I can post them somewhere. Now that I do this live, I'm always confused at how I go back and add all of this fun stuff. I think I can do it on my podcast. When I just put this in the audio, I can definitely add all of that on there. So I'll get all those references that you gave me so that I can link those up in the
Yeah,
Audible.
that sounds
At
great.
least. Yeah. So this is, so everyone go to @Shane_deconstructs at TikTok. And Shane, do you have anything to say about them trying to close down TikTok and claiming that China's taking us over? How do you feel about that?
Oh, I don't know. It seems to be like just a recycling narrative, but it seems to be mostly political theater right now.
Yeah.
So I don't see any like concern for it just yet. If it does happen, then whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I think I've heard from others that there are ways that you can back up all of your content so that if that happens, then I could just move over to another platform.
Yeah.
But who knows? I would cross that bridge when I get there.
Yeah.
TikTok for me is one, of course, it's a community creating platform, and that is my primary purpose, and it remains my primary purpose to offer support to people who are deconstructing their high demand religions, Mormonism, or anything else. Or maybe it's not a religion. Maybe it's some sort of other unhealthy high demand institution that you are escaping, and where I'm creating a community. I want to create a community where people can. It has ended up that my channel has been the approach is let's laugh about this
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah.
And so that continues to be my main goal in what I do over at TikTok. Mental health for others. People reach out to me all the time and ask for like resources or whatever. I will immediately say, I'm not a mental health professional, but
Yeah.
yes, here's a list of resources and places you can go. And those are the victory moments for me. The biggest victory moments for me are when people reach out, they DM me because my DMs are open on TikTok, and
Mm-hmm.
they say something like that, like, "Hey, I just like started learning all this stuff, found your channel, and I'm wondering if you could help me with some resources." And of course,
Oh,
the resources, and then just this may be, I don't know if this is selfish or not, but it's next level sweet when it's someone that I love or someone that's a family member, and I tell this story on one of my TikToks out there, but when you get that like sibling that you had no idea, or
mm,
like um or nephew or niece or cousin or whatever, and you get a message from them on TikTok, or even like a former neighbor that used to be in the ward, right? And they're like, "Hey, I hopped on TikTok to find community, and you were the first video it showed me."
oh
That
my
that
gosh.
literally happened to me once. This was a cousin, right? And first, you were the first one. It's like the TikTok algorithm is powerful.
Wow.
And so I'm here to utilize the power of that algorithm to
Right.
find people who are looking for support, and it's doing a great job so far. So it's a platform I'm happy with overall. It does have its issues, of course. It's got some
Yeah.
serious issues, but it's doing a pretty good job for my purposes so
It
far.
really is. It's one of the most learning social media channels, I feel. I feel as though, you know, I listen to a lot of political people on there, and there's health doctors on there that I listen to. It's not just hey, this is our family in the Bermuda, you know, we're on vacation. Here we are in Disneyland. And, you know, and that's pretty much what Facebook, you know, has kind of turned into.
Yeah.
But so I'm getting a lot of comments are talking about advertisements. I did not know how that happened, but interesting. I'd love to know, what are we advertising on in the middle of our conversation, Shane?
Oh, weird.
Interesting. Yeah. And I'll have to see what YouTube's doing. But I did not know that they could do that on a live thing. So thanks, Heather. Thanks for pointing that out. But no, that's it's very interesting that the people that you're reaching, and it's frustrating with the algorithms the way they are. I've almost gotten to the point where I just sweep past all of these media specialists that are telling you how to get more likes and how how many times you should do your reels.
TikTok is making a huge push for like TikTok Shop and everything right now. And it
Yeah.
has definitely become, it used to be, so I got on TikTok in like 2021 and just started lurking. I was a pure lurker for about a year. I followed only and had a couple of followers or whatever. And then I made the conscious decision to start to create content, to create the
Right.
community for support, right? And that was about October of last year, of 2022. So it's been a little over a year. And from when I started doing activity on TikTok, everything was like, I would say 1 out of 7 or 8, maybe even 10 was like one of these promotional or whatever's from TikTok or something. And now I feel like it's 2 out of 5 that are real, and 3 out of 5 are like our sponsored TikTok shop pushes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
little bit, it is getting a little bit annoying right now. And so
Yeah. Yeah. I know everybody's talking about monetizing, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. I just got on it for the education. So I'm just ignoring all of it and just doing what I enjoy doing. And I think what I love about some of the people that I follow, especially in my platform, my goal is to reach a lot of women. There's not a lot of the women's voices out there, especially in my demographics. And I think it's because I love Britt Hartley. And one of the things that she pointed out was, why do we want more women speakers in conference, so that they can just echo and quote the men, because that's all they're going to do. Because these are women that get their power through association. They're carrying the water for the patriarchy, because that's their only way to get any kind of power or recognition. And so I feel as though my demographic is older women that have raised their children, they've raised their grandchildren, they're happy with their spouse, and don't believe in the church anymore, but they're not going to cause any problems. They're just going to go along with it because we're too old to do this. And so I'm just trying to reach women that are like, what, you're not too old to find out who you are, and to find out, if you have any life left, please live it your best, And so that's my whole goal. I don't care about all the other stuff. But it's like I said, I want to laugh too. And I think we should do a thing on how long it took people to actually throw their garments out. Like, I had the bag up in the top of the closet for about a year. I was like, did I think I was going to go back? I don't know,
Exactly. So Renee, I had the same sort of experience, and this is like a huge kick myself moment, because I just held on to them. It was actually pretty easy for me to stop wearing them.
Yeah.
Once I didn't believe anymore, I was like, I'm gonna stop wearing those because those suck. So
yeah.
and it's a real thing for me. I tried so many different types of underwear. It was exciting for me. I was like, oh man, in high school, I used to be a tighty whitey guy. So let's give it a try, right? Like, am I still a tighty whitey guy? And I'm like, nah, I don't think I'm a tighty whitey guy anymore.
Yeah.
The boxers, I was like, no. But maybe I should make a TikTok and just recommend because I went through many. But anyway.
Yeah.
Enough
talking about
underwear.
Yeah, you have the hefty bag, and you're like walking out to the garbage. No, I better put it back in the closet, and then take it back out. No, and put it back in the closet.
I love that you had them in a hefty bag. So mine were in a drawer. Like, there was 2 specific drawers that were for the garments, right? And I just left them there, and they were in those drawers, and they kept taking up drawer space. And I was like, I got these. I could use that drawer space. So anyway, finally I was like, okay. And when I did it, I literally just took my drawer. You can just kind of do the thing where you get the drawer out of the
pull it out. Yeah.
And I walked outside, and I was like, oh, I got to my garbage bin, opened it up, and went to dump them in, and realized this is a great video moment.
Oh.
So I pulled out my phone. This is years before I was on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So I pulled out my phone, and I was like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this on record, you know? And so I held my phone, did the whole selfie thing, and I'm holding up my drawer with the other, you know, and I'm dumping it in, and I totally dump it in. And I got me dumping a drawer of garments into the outside garbage bin where it's down there with like pizza boxes and all the nasty stuff or whatever, you know? And that was so cathartic because I'm like, I used to, maybe one of the reasons why I held on to them forever is because I thought I should at least, you know, cut the markings out. Like
That's what I was just going to say.
Right.
Did you think, oh, I should cut the markings out and burn them or whatever?
Yeah, it creates this like anchor because you're like, when am I going to find time to like cut the markings out and burn my garments, you know, like, and so I didn't ever, and so finally I was just like, what the am I thinking? Like, just go throw those stupid things away, right? And so, I did it and I dumped it and I got it on film and everything and I watched that. And then I was so scared that like, someone in my family or whatever would like see that I filmed that. I was kind of insecure about that. That I put it into like sort of a hidden space, a hidden place in my phone or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And about a year ago, I was like, oh my gosh, I did that. I got that on film. I was like, sweet, that'll be great content. Where is it? I can't find it. I can't find it.
You can't find it?
No,
oh, crud.
So if I get it, I mean, I might have to recreate it or something. Maybe I'll do another recreation video or something. But like, every now and then I'll be like, where is that? And I'll go and like try and dig and find it again because it was
scrolling through the years.
Oh yes, I'm doing that all the time. And so. Anyway.
Oh, that's funny.
So if you ever see me do that video, then you know the backstory on it.
I do. Well, this has just been so great. Thank you so much for giving us your Sunday evening. I just can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. And again, everyone, Shane_deconstructs, go and watch his TikTok. Someone on the comments asked about Dan McClellan. He doesn't have a podcast, but he has a YouTube.
Just started a podcast
on YouTube
4 or 5 months ago. Yeah.
Data Over Dogma. But big TikTok. So you can find him on YouTube, Data Over Dogma. And then he's also on Instagram and Facebook.
He's on Instagram and Facebook, TikTok. I definitely recommend Dan McClellan's content because he just sets the record straight. I've sent so many videos to him when people are talking about, is this a paganism or a pagan ritual? Or is this
the Christmas pagan thing.
Yeah, like, he's set me straight on a few. Like, I think I used to think that Easter was a pagan. And he's like, nope, this is a common misunderstanding. It's actually, you know, and so there's some good stuff there. He's corrected me on a lot of assumptions that I got from ex-Mormonism, from like ex-Mormon culture. And I was like, that's got to be the way it is. And he corrected me and he showed me the data for it. And I'm like, okay, I'm shifting that back. So it's really good. But by no means is he out there defending Mormonism, which is crazy, right? Because he worked at
he's a biblical scholar.
He's a biblical scholar. And he's like, look, my beliefs are a different thing. And he doesn't even share his beliefs with his audience. He's like, because it doesn't matter, because data and belief are two different things. And so it's really, really great content.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's excellent. And so is yours.
Oh,
so yes, someone just asked, no, he's primarily on TikTok, and you can find him on Instagram and Facebook, but those are primarily personal social medias, but he'll respond. If you DM him, he'll answer you back. So
you can. And if you find me on Facebook, I'm happy to connect. It's no big deal.
Perfect.
If you just look up Shane Larson, the algorithms are probably going to like connect you. If you're in any way connected to like the ex-Mormon universe, then you can find me there and on Instagram. And sure, I'm happy to connect there. But I don't really create content, deconstruction content over there. On Facebook, I'll do an occasional post that's just kind of like light thinking, whatever. People there mostly know where I am. I've done a slow rebrand over there, and people know that I am like, but I don't push the envelope too hard over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you once again. I'm sure we'll be doing this again. And when you tag me when you do your garment dump.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Okay. Have a great week.
Thanks, Renee. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh my gosh. You guys have got to go and watch his TikToks. They're absolutely hilarious. And I know there's a lot of you out there that aren't on TikTok. But this will give you an excuse to get on TikTok. So I just want to, I want to comment on some of the Let's see. Coco B says, unfortunately, you get used to it. Getting rid of the garments took about a minute to get used to. You know what I found? Tell me, respond back, let me know, or you can DM me or whatever. I found that, we spent most of our married life in the Pacific Northwest, and it's chilly. It's just, you've got that dampness, it's wet, and there's just a chill in the air. And I remember there was just that layer that kind of kept you warm. And that was one of the things was I'm kind of cold, so that was interesting. But boy, trying to find clothing, even trying to find modest clothing with your garments. That was such a hassle. And any of you ladies that are out there, you all know that, underwear is part of the whole feeling of being a woman. And it's just so nice to be able to find pretty underwear along with your pretty outside wear. So it's one of the things that I really enjoy. So anyway, in fact, you guys don't laugh at me, but I was a one-piecer my whole life. I could not get used to the two-piece because I could not handle having that much stuff around my waist. I didn't want to have jeans and then the elastic around my waist and pulling up 45 different things when you went to the bathroom. And so I was a one-piecer. Can you guys believe that? I mean, yeah, that was crazy. So anyway, I want to ask you, be sure and subscribe to this channel. Shane and I were just talking about the cuckoo algorithms, and I know it gets annoying people say that, but honestly, if you subscribe and if you like, then it makes a huge difference on how much we get out there. So it's really important that you do that. And if you turn on the notifications, because I let my show is on when my guests are available to be on. So I don't have a certain time and day like some of the other podcasts do. I try to work around other people's schedules. And by the way, someone just mentioned Mormon News Roundup. Next week, I'm going to be interviewing Mormon book review, Stephen Pinecker, and we're going to have a fun conversation right before Christmas. And I love Stephen. I've met him. We've had lunch. He's just an amazing human, and he's going to be on my show next Friday. So again, I like to work with people and their schedules, so I'm a little bit all over the place. So if you push the notification button, you'll find out when I'm going to be on again. And I'll find out more about the advertisements. I didn't realize, and I'll be curious when I go back and watch it to see what they were and how that worked. I must have pushed a button, who knows. And also don't forget to donate. Any donations go directly to Mormon Discussions. They're not sent to me. I am an umbrella underneath Mormon Discussions, and the work and stuff that Bill does to make his channel excellent. And if you listen to Shane, Bill Reel is one of the guys that really helped him through his deconstruction. So any donations go directly to Mormon Discussions, and it's a nonprofit. So if they don't get donations, then they don't survive. So we don't want that to go away. So please donate if you can. And we will see you all again next Friday. Have a great week coming up. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today on She Became Visible. Join me each week as my guests and I explore the path of womanhood and tell all our stories. We'll talk about finding the courage to be ourselves and motivate each other to be everything that we're capable of and meant to be, no matter what happens around us. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to donate at shebecamevisible.org.